quick overview of NADO. I'm sure many of you are aware of who we are, but some may be new to the field. But NADO was established, now it's been 53 years ago, 54 years ago, as we serve as kind of a trade association for all the what we call regional development organizations. We do that because they go by so many names: COGs, regional councils, development districts, things like that. But we kind of put it all under the umbrella of what we call RDOs, or regional development organizations. As many of you know, the big thing in DC currently, well, there's two big things. One is infrastructure. We hear that every day, and I'm sure you're hearing that if you follow what's going on in DC. And then second, I think, is the normal appropriations process. So the Infrastructure Investment Act, again, was passed and signed into law on November 15th. It's a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. It also was a reauthorization of surface transportation programs. I think there was a 5-year authorization, which I think certainly impacts you at a local level. It authorizes funding levels for transportation projects and so forth, programs and things of that nature. So that's normally done as a standalone bill. It was included in this infrastructure bill because a lot of times it's difficult to reauthorize. So I was glad to see that. There's a $550 billion in new spending that's included in this Infrastructure Act, and it touches all modes of infrastructure, particularly transportation, water, broadband, and so forth. The other thing that I think is very significant for a number of you is the historic funding levels for the regional commissions. I know some of you may be in the Appalachian Regional Commission. They received a funding level is over $1 billion for 5 years, which is, again, that's historic. The other agencies, Delta Regional Authority, Northern Border, Denali, received increases in historic funding levels as well. In addition, the Southeast Crescent Commission, which I know many of you would be impacted by, we're excited about the progress they've made this year. Some of you may know it is a commission that has been established for essentially all the counties that are not in the Appalachian Regional Commission. Basically, well, they call it the Southeast Crescent, but it's from the coast in on a lot of those ARC states. The counties and the regions that are not in that are in this new Southeast Crescent Commission. It's been in existence for a number of years. In fact, the other thing I think that's very impactful for those that are metropolitan planning organizations, or MPOs, there's a 30% increase in what's called PL funds, or planning funds. That's very significant. I don't think that MPOs have seen that large of an increase on PL funds in a very long time, if ever. And then the other thing is, in a lot of the bills, the American Rescue Plan, the CARES Act, and now with the infrastructure bill, there is significant funding for broadband. Here again is we try to provide as much resources as we can. If you really want to dig deeper into it, it has links to the entire bill, Build Back Better. And I mentioned this is the second part, the second phase, the second bill of the administration's infrastructure plan. It is not passed into law yet. The House passed it on the 19th of November. I think if you followed anything in DC, you know that the Senate is working its way through to see if it's something they want to pass. Other things that are in the Build Back Better, I'd mentioned the $5 billion for EDA. Included in that is what's called the Regional Economic Growth Clusters. And it is an opportunity for regions to submit funding for technical assistance, planning, and what the new term's called pre-development. I don't think planning even comes close to describing what councils of governments do. I mean, they basically help their local governments from concept of an idea, as in we need more capacity at our water plant, until until the ribbon cutting. There's so much that you know that the council of governments and regional councils do. It's not just planning. And so there's pre-development funds, which in this case could be preliminary engineering reports, it could be environmental stuff, but actually pre-development stuff that strengthens your application for federal funding. So we're excited to do rural prosperity development grants. Again, it's supporting rural development, and it has pre-development funding and things of that nature. So I think what we really try to do is broaden the funding capabilities, the funding mechanisms to broaden what you can use those funds for. So if the Build Back Better passes, I think you're going to see a lot more flexible funding from both EDA and from USDA, as well as more eligible projects because of that. We made certain you can see who's eligible for that. You don't see specifically named EDD or economic development districts or planning or things like that, but we have through a number of methods made sure that you are included for funding, including a ruling or an opinion from USDA's legal office that economic development districts through EDA are eligible for this funding. So although you might read that and say it doesn't say specifically COGs, please know that we are in constant contact, and we have, I think, what we can prove that EDDs are eligible, and discussions with them. They want to work with EDD. So another thing that's being talked about and we're engaged and involved with is the reauthorization of the Economic Development Administration. Again, back to your civics class, there's really two ways to fund federal agencies. One is a reauthorization process, which is totally separate from the appropriations. And that is that we authorize Congress to spend money on these programs in this agency. And then once that's done, if we were in a civics book, then it goes to the appropriations side, and they decide how much money based on recommendations from the appropriation. In fact, earlier this month, the Senate had a hearing on EDA reauthorization, and we had one of our members invited to speak on behalf of economic development districts, COGs, regional councils. So we're excited about that, and it does appear that there is a possibility it's going to happen. Again, the big thing there is once you're authorized, it's very difficult to cut you out of an appropriations process. Here's some of the priorities that we're advocating for on behalf of our members. We have 6 specific things. We're also in a coalition with, again, National Association of Counties, International Economic Development Council, a Brookings Institute. There's just those that are involved in rural economic development. We have overarching goals that we agreed on, but these are 6 that are specific to us. We have a huge goal of getting the EDA partnership planning grants up to 80 million annually. Right now, you're seeing about 70,000 per COG or per EDD for your planning grants. Our goal is to get that to 200,000. And so we definitely know that you guys need more funding to help your local governments. That's one of our goals. Match for local governments. You can have all the money you want to, but if you as a local government don't have the match to do it, it's useless money. So we're really pushing. In some cases, I think you're seeing a 50-50 match on projects. We're really pushing for increased federal share. We're pushing 90. Our goal is 80. Don't let that leave the room. But EDA, I think, has come to support the potential for 80% grants to local governments, which would be a huge impact, I think. The other thing we always hear is that rural regions can't always compete at EDA against some of the urban areas. And so what we're looking at is some pilot projects similar to what DOT does with their, well, they used to be called Tiger grants. I think they're compete grants now, but have a rural-only competition where the PD region is competing across the nation with similar regions and not against the Atlantas and not against others. So that, I think, again, that's getting traction as well. Again, pre-development, we're seeing success on that. We just feel like that's a way that we can help our members and our local governments. And then distress formula is always a complicated one, is making sure that you in your community have those distress criteria to apply for these grants. And that include pockets, which we're trying to get down to specific, maybe census tract levels of poverty, as opposed to if you're in this county, you're in the 80%, 20%, or 50%, 50%. We want a better process. And then the big thing they've asked us is how much do we think that EDA overall should budget to EDDs of their allocation? And we're pushing 20%. That's a big number as well, but EDA has not pushed back heavily on that as well. So there's opportunities to really, I think, reimagine, reinvent EDA and use you as partners across the nation to support that. So again, we're operating right now without a budget in our nation. We're on a continuing resolution that runs through December the 3rd. Once December 3rd comes around, Congress is either going to have to pass another short-term CR or another continuing resolution until a budget's passed. Now, in the past couple of years, I think you've seen it many times. December is the time that everybody wants to go home for the holidays. They force Congress to stay in there until they come up with a budget. And then right before Christmas, miraculously, it happens. That's going to be a little more challenging this year. I think what we're going to see before the 3rd is a 2-week extension of that CR, probably to the 17th. That's their hope, is to having a budget done by then. I think there's a real possibility of no decision being made there, and the likelihood or possibility of a full year continuing resolution. That's only happened one time. And you as local government leaders know that's the crappiest way to budget, is to let's just put the same money we did last year, because your priorities and your needs change year to year. So we're hopeful that's kind of a last resort. We're hopeful that's not the case. And in talking to Republican leadership yesterday, I feel like they don't want to see this happen. That's been a threat from their side, but I think they don't want to see this, particularly on the defense side. I think that that would not be good for Republican priorities as well as Democrat priorities. So they're really working to get something done by the end of the year. Another thing that I'm sure you're aware of is the debt ceiling that has to be raised, which is basically how much our nation can borrow. There's no set date on that, but it's looking like sometime in mid-December that's going to have to be raised, or we default on our debt. It's not talked a lot about. I think the focus now is on appropriations and Build Back Better, but this is looming right over their heads.